Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where I'm going to be teaching you how to play Ceylon. Ceylon is Sri Lanka back in the old days, and it's when they were making tea for the English Empire. So in this game we're going to be playing people who are making tea, or farming tea. We're going to be running tea plantations in Ceylon. The game is for 2 to 4 players, and it's quite a light Euro game. It's got some action selection, some territory control, a little bit of set collection. Here on the box, it is suspiciously absent of, oh, here we go, 60 minutes. Not sure about that. I would say probably 45 to 90. It can be quite variable. It says 10 and up. I'll walk you through the components in the box, how to set them up, and how to play the game. So we've got one rulebook, but we don't need that because we've got this video. Whoa, we've got a board. We'll get back to that later. Here we've got some land tiles for changing the elevation of the land. We've got here a deck of action cards. These are called contracts, and we'll need to fulfill them with tea. This here is a shortcut to all the contracts available in the game. We've got this teapot, which is a first player marker, and some more little elevations, which we'll need later. Here we've got tea plantations. Here we've got tea. Tea comes in 3 varieties: black tea, green tea, and white tea. We've got some technology tokens. We've got some points tokens for territory control. We've got some 1 and 2 denominations of money, as well as some 5s and some 10s as well. We've got 4 player boards. Everyone's going to need a player board. We've got 4 bags of tokens in all the different player colors. Each bag contains 8 tea leaves, 6 round tokens, and 1 little meeple. We've got tokens here, which are for the counselors, the variable counselor power tokens. And here, we've got some variable player power tokens, but these are a variant that you won't use if this is your first time playing, unless you're really keen on them. So now that I've taken everything out of the box, I'm ready to start setting up my game. So I'm going to show you setup for a 3-player game, but there would be some differences in a 2-player game, so I'll explain those as I set up the game. I'm also not going to use the variable player powers, but I'll explain how they work right at the end in case you want to incorporate them into one of your future games. So you can set everything else to one side for now. The first thing you need to do is take these 5 land tiles and distribute them randomly into the 4 territories. And that means that there's going to be one that you won't use, and you can return that to the box because this is just to increase replayability. You can set these out any way you like because everyone will have an opportunity to choose where they're going to start later on. So it'll be sort of self-balancing. And then return one to the box. And then again take these 4 little ones here. Put them out anywhere that you want. Like that. Now it should be noted that if we were playing a 2-player game, we would only use 3 of these territories. And it doesn't really matter which 3 you use, although probably don't remove one of the 2 in the middle. I guess you could if you played a lot and that seemed like something fun. But just take one of the territories, don't bother putting anything in it, and you won't be using that or that counselor for the duration of the game in a 2-player. So the next thing we're going to do is randomize the counselor powers. So we should have 8 counselor tiles here, but we're only going to use 4, and we're going to randomly assign them to each counselor. So as you buy favor with these counselors, you'll unlock these abilities. Again, if we're playing 2-player, we'd only put them out for the territories we were using, but as we're playing 3, I'll put out all 4. And the rest of these can go back in the box. They won't be used this game. Next up, I'm going to take these action cards here. I'm going to give these a good shuffle. And then they go down here. After that, we take these 20 contract tokens here, and we also give these a shuffle. And then we're going to put these face up here on this draw space here. And then we're going to flip over 1 in each of the 3 wagon spaces here like this. Next, we'll take these 17 technology tokens. We're just going to put these face up in their spot on the board, which is here. We put out these territory control tiles here. Now, you only really need to put out tiles equal to the number of players. So if you're putting out tiles for 2 players, put out the 10 and the 6. For 3, you can include the 3 tile. And if you're playing with 4 players, you can include the 1 tile as well. But as you'll be drawing off the top, you put them in descending order. So you start with the 10 on the top, moving down to the 1. Then you just put these plantation tiles, the money tokens here, and the tea tokens as well, somewhere where everybody can reach them. Make sure you put out this distribution tile here somewhere where everyone can see it. And then we'll give each player what they need to play the game, which means they each get 1 player board, 3 players there. 4th player goes back in the box. We'll give each player one of these color bags and we'll set up their tokens. So you put your tea leaves along your tickets on the bottom of your board like this. Now, for now, hang on to these 5 along with your meeple here on your board. And your 6th token can go here on the start of the scoring track. We can choose a first player and we can distribute some cards. The first player, it says in the rules, is the last one to have drunk tea, but you can choose any method that suits your play group in order to select the first player. But you just pick who they are and give them one of these teapots. And then what's going to happen is we are going to deploy onto the board with our people. So now that blue player is the first player, they're going to pick their starting plantation. They can pick any spot on the board, provided it's at elevation 0, which is actually on the board itself and not any of the cardboard tiles. They'll take one of these plantation tokens, they'll put it down on their board, they'll take their meeple, put their little meeple on the board there, along with the first plantation token from their track here. Then each player will go around the table doing likewise in turn order. Subsequent players pick a starting location. It must be in a separate territory to the territory chosen by the other players. If it were not apparent, the 4 territories are divided up by the placements of these rivers. Finally, each player is dealt 3 cards from the action card deck, and we're ready to start playing the game with the first turn. And then each player gets 15 coins and 1 black tea chest, and these go into the appropriate spaces on their boards. Finally, we take 3 of our player discs here, and we put them on the technology tracker. When you put them down on the technology tracker, you put them in this green space here, and just make sure that the last player is on the bottom, and they're in ascending turn order with the first player on top. And now that we've done all that, we're ready for the first turn of Ceylon. In Ceylon, we're going to be harvesting tea, trying to fulfill contracts by shipping the tea back to England, ultimately trying to score the most victory points in order to win. We'll take turns playing these action cards to carry out actions on the board here, which will involve harvesting tea, developing technology, and shipping tea back to England in order to earn rewards, typically victory points or money. So it is possible to earn victory points during the game by fulfilling these contracts up here. At the end of the game, we'll also be scored a lot of extra victory points for the territory we control, for the amount of money we have, awarded points for the advancements we've made on the technology track, and we'll be awarded points for having completed contracts of different numbers. We will also be docked points for each of these plantation tokens we have at the end, because we won't have completed them. The end of a set game of Ceylon can be triggered in 2 ways. The first way is this deck of action cards runs out. Once you reach the end of the deck of action cards, the game end is triggered. The other way a game of Ceylon can end is if one player places all of their plantation tokens out onto the board. This gives the players some element of control over the game's length as well. The game uses an action and follow mechanic, and what that means is that the player whose turn it is will take 1 action, and then every other player can also take an action. Ceylon shakes up the traditional sort of format of this by forcing you to play actions that are based on these action cards, which limit the options that you have. Let me walk you through the actions on these cards so you have a better understanding on how that works and how it relates to the points on the board. There are 5 possible actions in Ceylon, which are indicated by these symbols on these action cards. This action here means make a plantation. This involves you putting down these plantations on the board, allowing you to harvest more tea. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute. This one here is harvest. This involves picking from the plantations. This is where you take tea from the plantations on the board and put them on your player board so you can sell it later. Speaking of selling, that's the third action here. This is selling, which means taking the tea from your player board and purchasing one of these contracts here. The next action is a little more complicated. This is purchase favor. This involves you purchasing favor with the local councillors for each of the territories. When you purchase favor with a councillor, this has two important aspects. The first is that you unlock access to their councillor power, which will give you benefits as you play the game. The second reason that you want to be friends with the councillor is that at the end of the game, when you're scoring these territories based on who has majority control, you cannot score any of your plantations unless you have favor with the councillor. So this will prevent you from scoring in the end game, so you want to make sure you get these favors in. The final action is develop technology. And when you develop technology, you move up the technology track. Moving up the technology track has a whole ton of benefits that we'll talk about in a bit more detail later on. But one really important thing to note is that you get one of these technology tokens. There are also two basic actions on these cards. Take 2 coins, so you can always forgo taking any actions to take 2 coins, and move. You can always forgo any other actions in order to move your meeple around the board. When you play an action card from your hand, you put it down on the board. You can put it down on the board like this, or you can put it down like this. What's important to note is this little 1 dot up here and the 3 dots down here. This means that this is the action that you will take by yourself. So in this case, you would take the favor with a councillor action. Down here, this is the action everyone else will take. So they will all take a sell action. This is fundamental to success at Ceylon, because you want to try and put actions up here that you want, and you want to try and put actions down here that your opponents cannot benefit from. At any point, you or any of your opponents can forgo taking the action depicted here to take one of the 2 basic actions, collect 2 coins, or move a meeple. What I'm going to do now is talk through the actions in the game in a specific order that I think will best highlight how the game works. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about the basic action, movement. So when you take the movement action, you forgo your main action in order to do so. And you can always move to any adjacent hexagonal space for free. If you want to move a further space, you can, but it will cost you 1 coin. If you want to move another space, you can do that too. It will cost you 2 coins. So in order to move 3 spaces, you pay 3 coins. If you want to move a 4th space, that's going to cost you 3 coins for a total of 6 coins. So there is an exponential increase to the cost of movement for every step you take after your first free step. The second basic action is take 2 coins, in which you just take 2 coins and add them to your pool on your board. Very simple, and it's usually used if you can't do anything better with the actions available to you. So now that we've looked at the 2 basic actions, let's talk about the advanced actions, and we'll start with making a plantation. Now, if you're going to make a plantation, you will have to move, because you cannot make a plantation where you've already got one. So once you've moved off your starting location, you can take the plantation action. The plantation action looks like this. And when you take this action, you must first pay 5 rupees to the bank. So this will come out of your personal supply and return to the general supply. Then you can take one of the plantation tokens from near the board, and you can put it down underneath your meeple. You can only put plantations under your meeple. However, you can build a plantation even if there's another meeple already there. Once you've done that, take the leftmost plantation token from your board and put it down as well. And that's how you make a plantation. Next, let's look at harvest. This is the harvest action here. Unlike the plantation action, it's free. And when you take the harvest action, you can take a tea chest matching the elevation of the plantations that you're adjacent to or standing on top of. So, in this case, we can take 2 tea chests because we can take one from the plantation we're on and one from the plantation here. We can also take a tea chest from the plantation of our opponents as well, but that comes with a catch. You'll notice this handy little shortcut here on your player board that shows the different elevations on the board and the kinds of tea that you'll get. You'll note that the basic tea is black, and that comes from a 0 elevation. From a first level elevation, you'll get green tea, such as this one here. And from the second level elevation, like this one, you'll get white tea, making white tea the rarest tea. In this case, our pink player decides to take 2 black tea and a green tea, meaning that she's getting 2 teas from her plantations and 1 from the blue players. She'll take these teas and put them on her board. Note that you have a maximum of 5 tea chests on your player board at any given time. Now the blue player will receive 1 victory point because someone harvested tea from one of his plantations and it wasn't him. So now that we know how to put out a plantation and harvest tea from plantations, what do we do with that tea? Well, we sell it for money and glory and, most importantly, victory points. During the game, you will be trying to match your tea chests to the contracts available at the top of the board here. It's worth noting that these trains all have different numbers, and you want to try and acquire the trains with the different numbers on. At the end of the game, you'll be given points for having one of each of the 5 numbers. But you'll also want to be looking at these rewards in the middle at the bottom. When you take one of these collections, you can have either the victory points on the left or the money on the right. But money is quite hard to come by, and this is one of the best ways to make money. Now, our pink player would like to buy this contract. We can see here that she has the prerequisite number of teas, so she pays these back to the bank and takes the contract. She immediately chooses to gain 3 victory points or 10 rupees. At this early stage of the game, she's decided to take the money. The contract is flipped face down and put into the first open ticket here on her board. If her board were full, she should not acquire another ticket. But note that this is for the 5 different variations. If she requires a ticket that matches a number she's already got, she simply stacks them. If you purchase a ticket on your turn, the ticket is not replenished until the end of the round. So this means that another player would have less choice when they follow on from you, but after your turn, these will be restocked from the deck. This also means that you can always see what number's coming up next, so you can try and prepare if it's one that you need to complete your set, because that set is worth a lot of victory points at the end of the game. The next action I'm going to talk about is buying favor with a counselor. But let me first explain how territory works. There are 2 ways to gain points from territory. The first is this method here, and this is a little bonus thing that happens during the game. Whenever a player builds a plantation in each territory, they can take the top token from this stack. They will gain these victory points at the end of the game. So being first is great because you get 10 points. The next player will get 6, then 3 and 1 after that. The other reason you want to build plantations all over the board is because of these counselors. At the end of the game, whoever has the majority of plantations in each territory will be awarded victory points. However, you can only score those plantations if you have favor with one of the local counselors. So for example, Candy here controls this territory, but if you don't have favor here with him, you cannot score your plantations. So in this case, Blue has favor with Candy, so Blue will win this fight in the end, because Pink cannot participate until she also buys favor with Candy. It is possible for Yellow to buy favor with Candy as well, but she doesn't have any plantations to score in the end game, so she wouldn't be able to compete in the territory control part. There is another reason to buy favor with the counselors, however, and that is these special counselor abilities. When you purchase favor with a counselor, you have to pay 5 gold to the bank. I called it gold, it's actually called rupees. And then you can take one of your little player discs and put it down here on the track. The order is unimportant. It should be noted that if you would like to purchase favor with a counselor, you must be located in their territory in order to do so. Once you've got your disc down, you will have access to the counselor's special ability. Rahuna here has been assigned the ability that means that when you take the basic action to gain 2 coins, you'll get 3 instead. A very powerful counselor ability. The counselor abilities are all very powerful. For example, the ability here allows you to place plantations in adjacent spaces when you plant them. This counselor ability is very powerful. This means that after you start moving, instead of having an escalating cost to moving, you will only have to pay 1 per additional step. That's just a few of the counselor abilities available in the game, but they are all very powerful. And so you will want to acquire favor with all of these counselors, not just so that you can gain access to their abilities, but also so you can compete in the territory. You must think carefully about the order in which you choose them and how that's going to affect your strategy. The final main action we're going to look at is technology. And this is a very, very important action. I actually cannot stress enough how important progressing up the technology track is. Normally, I wouldn't put so much emphasis on this kind of thing, preferring to let players develop their own strategies and find their own ways of winning. However, this technology track really is crucial to doing well at the game. When you take the technology action, you get to advance one space up the technology track. This costs 5 to do, and then additionally, every player other than you gains 1 coin from the bank. That's because the minute you unveil your new tea technology, they all rip it off and gain some money, even though they didn't have to spend anything doing the research. But never fear, there are bonuses to taking this technology action. The first is that you get one of these technology tokens. This token will sit in a special place on your board. On your turn, before or after taking your main action, you can spend the technology token to take any action you want except advanced technology. So you can't use a technology token to gain a technology, but you can spend it, and then you can take the plantation action, you can take the harvest action, the sell action, you can take the counselor favor action, or either of the 2 basic actions, take money or move. This is particularly powerful because it can give you access to actions that you might not otherwise have due to the limitation of the cards in your hand. If you do a lot of technology, you might find that you have multiple technology tokens. It should be noted that you can only play 1 per turn, so there's no point in saving them up. Also noting, you will not get anything for these at the end of the game, so you should use them during the game to get any benefit from them. In addition to getting one of these technology tokens, advancing up the board is important because it will break all ties. Whoever is highest on the technology track will always be the winner if there is a tie. Note that whoever is on top will be the tiebreaker breaker. So, for example, if blue is tied with yellow, blue will win. But if yellow is tied with pink, yellow will win. This means that advancing up the track ahead of people is not as good because they can catch up to you and then they'll be sat on top of you. However, if you don't advance up the track, then you're going to be left behind. Additionally, if you make it to this spot or this spot at the very top, each time you do so, you'll gain 5 victory points. At the end of the game, whoever's highest on this track will also be awarded points. You'll get 10 points for being in first place, 6 for second place, 3 for being in third, and 1 for being in last place. This means that there's really a lot of benefit for advancing up the technology track, and this tiebreaker thing is really important, so don't neglect to do this. So after you've played your card, taken your action, everybody else in turn order will take an action, and then you'll replace any of the contracts that were sold up here. You'll draw a new card so that you always have 3 in hand, and it will be the next player's turn. Once this deck is exhausted, or all of these tea leaves are out, the game will end. It should be noted that when the end game is triggered, there is an equal number of turns played out, so if the end game is triggered by the first player, then the second and third player will each have a turn before the game ends and endgame scoring takes place. So in the endgame, there's a scale of scoring, and it's all shown here on your player board. So we can see here that we score money, territories, and technology, and these are always scored with the same scale here. First place 10 points, second place 6 points, third place 3 points, and last place 1 point. So whoever has the most money will gain 10 points. Remember that if there's a tie for money, this is broken by the position on the technology track. Then you'll score territories. So here's an example of a territory that might be scored in the endgame. We see that pink has 2, blue has 2, and yellow has 1. They've all bought favor with the counselor, so they can all be scored. What we'll do is we'll give yellow player 1 point because they're definitely in last. And then we'll check the technology track for pink and blue. We see that blue is ahead, which means that they break the tie, so blue gets 10 points and pink gets 6. It should be noted that you score all 4 territories separately. Next you'll score for the technology track. Once again, it's the exact same. Whoever's highest will get 10, 6, and 3. And if someone's on top, they're in first place. After that, check your sets of trains. For the variety of numbers you have, you'll score points equal to this. So if you have just one train number, you'll get 1 point. 2 train numbers get you 3, 3 train numbers get you 6, 4 gets you 10, and all 5 trains gets you 15 points. Then you'll lose 2 points for each tea leaf still on your board. Once all that has been resolved, you'll have made your way around the track on the outside of the board, and whoever's in the first place will be declared the winner. Note that you must have participated, like I've mentioned in various other points in this video, you must at least be able to participate to score. So, for example, when you're scoring who has the most money, again, this is awarded in places 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, but if you don't have any money, you get 0 points. Similarly, if you have not advanced any spaces on the technology track at all, you're still in the green starting position, you get 0 points for the technology score as well. If you have no train contracts, you get 0 points for that. If there is a tie in the endgame score, then whoever has advanced the furthest on the technology track is declared the winner. Or, this is going to be whoever's highest if everybody's on top of one another. So now that we've been through the whole game, I'll just quickly show you the variant player power tiles that you can use if you want to change things up. If you like, during setup, you can shuffle these tiles here and deal 1 to each player. Once everyone's got a tile, they'll turn them face up and put them down on their board. This tile is a special one-off ability that you can use once during the game, and it will also determine player order. For example, the player with this tile will be the first player. Note that if you were playing a 3-player game and these other 2 tiles came out like this player would be the first player and would put down their plantation first. This player would put down their plantation next as they have the 3 tile, and then this person would go last with placing their plantation on the board because they have tile number 5. However, if this tile had been given to the player sitting to the left of the player with this tile, the turn order would look like this. So even though turn order remains clockwise from the first player, the order of placement of the plantations during the setup of the game can vary in the ascending order of these tiles. These tiles also give you a unique player ability to use once in the game. For example, this one says that once per game, when you take the money basic action, you can have a bonus 5 coins. This one here can be used on one-off occasion to put down another T token on one of your plantations, allowing you to essentially double up on tokens there. Note that this doesn't increase the yield of the plantation when you take a harvest action. This just allows you to get an extra token off your board if you want to free up one of your ticket slots, or if you're trying to reduce the negative points you get at the end of the game. This one means that when you carry out a councillor action in one of the districts, you can instead put your piece down in one of the districts where your pawn is not located. And I'll let you discover those other variable player powers yourself as you play through the game. So with that, I'm done explaining the rules of Ceylon. I hope that's given you some insight into how the game works and has got you excited to play it if it's on your docket. But if you'd like to see the game in action, I'll be back tomorrow with my friends Michael and Chris, and we're going to play through Ceylon and see who can become the tea master of Sri Lanka. Thanks very much for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel because that helps to continue producing content like this. As usual, all the sections are in the description below if you want to find something specific to reference again. Thanks very much for watching, and see you all tomorrow.